Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate Breakdown. It's for Friday, July 21st, and we're back. We got a nice little slate on tap for today. Let's get into it. But before we do, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to all our videos. And if you are not already, come join us at LineStar. $29.99 per month gets you access to all of our props AI stuff, as well as all of the DFS projections, optimizer, and all the tools we have for the various sports. Now, let's get into the fun. We're going to start off by going over the perfect lineups and winning lineups for both yesterday's MLB main slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. And then we'll get into the pitcher ownership and lastly, the good old stacks. So, first, starting with yesterday's main slate, perfect lineup. All right, we got Corbin Burnes and George Kirby coming in as the pitchers you needed to own. They absolutely both crushed it. Strider, didn't make it. He had a couple bad innings and still had 12 Ks, but those bad innings were enough to knock him out of the perfect lineup. And then, as far as hitting, we had a little Brave stack and a little Milwaukee stack here. So nice lineup there. And then the winning lineup, it came in with Andrew Abbott and Lorenzen for the two pitchers you needed. And then as far as hitting, we had a 3-man Brave stack, a 3-man Arizona stack, so that was a little bit of a game stack there. Pretty interesting. Oh, sorry, actually a 4-man Arizona, 3-man Atlanta, and then a cheap catcher from the Mets who hit a home run. So nice lineup there. Kind of interesting 4-3-1 construction. And, they won by over 4 points there. So congrats to the winner. And now let's check out the FanDuel lineup. All right, FanDuel, we got Corbin Burnes. We have a 3-man Brave stack, 2-man Diamondback stack. So nice little lineup there. And then as far as the winning lineup, we did have Corbin Burnes there once again. We had a 2-man Arizona and all one-offs. So yesterday it was one of those kind of rare slates where no team really went nuts. And when that happens, and there's just a lot of teams at say 3, 5, 6 runs, stacking then, sometimes is a little worse just because you end up with having guys zeros and stuff. But with that being said, I would say this is not the norm of a slate, and there is usually at least one team that goes really nuts. So it was a fun slate yesterday. It was an early one, so we didn't have a show. But now let's get into today's slate. So today's slate is an interesting one. Let's get over to DraftKings. All right, so we got 11 games. Normal start time, 4:05 here. There is a couple concerns for weather. So this Boston game does have some weather around it, so we're going to need to look at that one. And then I believe New York has a little bit of weather concerns. Also, the New York one seems like it totally should play. The Boston one, there is real concern to it not playing. However, I think as of right now, it looks like it will play. Maybe some delays, but a good chance of the game playing. Just pay attention to weather as it comes closer because being, 4+ hours out, a lot of different stuff can happen. So, all right, Let's get into it now. Pitcher ownership. We got Framber Valdez coming in as the highest owned pitcher. No surprise here. 39% owned. It is against the Oakland Athletics. Everybody likes picking on the Athletics. LineStar loves him. 23.46 fantasy projection here. And look, Framber is a guy that incredibly low whip. He has solid K rate, 29%. Oakland strikes out a decent amount, almost 30% versus lefties. So this combined K rate is just huge, or just very solid today at 26. But you also combine all of that with Valdez just being very, very good at being efficient and being able to work late into the games. And it's no surprise that he's the highest owned pitcher. So he's in a great spot. I think a lot of people will like him today. Next, we got Lance Lynn. You know, it's versus the Twins, who have been striking out a lot versus righties, but they've also been a little bit of a sneaky offense. So understand that, they've been decent, and Lynn's given a lot of fly balls, although very little hard contact. But Twins are striking out almost 30%. And over the last 5 games, Lance Lynn is striking out 36.7% of batters. That is insane. That is unsustainable, but it's been really good, and it's led to a insane 32.8% combined K rate. Now, one thing I have to say with Lance Lynn is he's inconsistent. He can be absolutely great. He can be lights out one day, the next day not be that great. So he is one of those pitchers where if everybody's on the guy, I have no issue getting off of him. And this is a situation, if everybody is on him, I might be forced to get off. However, I do think he is a little bit too cheap, and the projection is pretty solid. So, LineStar likes him, but he is inconsistent. He can show you negatives or, low mid-teens in a performance very, very easily. Especially against this Twins team that has been kind of surprisingly hot and interesting team for hitting. So they're also good versus righties. They strike out a lot, but they do hit righties well. All right, next, Clark Schmidt. Clark Schmidt's probably my favorite value option for today. 23% K rate, 24% combined K rate for today. KC strikes out a decent amount. I think this is a very interesting call. At a little less ownership, 13% 13-point fantasy projection at 6,200 won't kill you, especially when he has some of these ceiling games. So if he can get 5, 6 strikeouts, he's probably in a really good spot. And his strikeout line today is at 6.5. I think that is extremely high and will likely come down throughout the day. But it just goes to show you that sportsbooks do like his upside in the strikeout department today. Next, we got Joe Ryan, 10.6K. And look, Ryan's in a decent spot here. White Sox strike out a good amount. They're not great versus righties. Joe Ryan's been very good versus them before. He has struggled a little bit recently, 5.43 FIP over his last 5. But look, he's an extremely good pitcher, and I think you can really consider him an ace at this point in his career and how good he has been this year. One issue I got to bring up here, he's allowing a lot of hard contact and a lot of fly balls. So I would not be surprised if he gives up a home run or 2. And his day may depend on if there are guys on base when he does that. So he typically isn't a guy that lets a lot of guys on base. Very low walk per 9 rate. Solid K rate. I do like him a lot, especially at his ownership today. You gotta love Shohei. Shohei has bounced back a little bit. He did struggle a little bit and has struggled the last 2 games, but his K rate has still been really solid. That FIP, 3.33 over the last 5. It's been solid. There's no real things I really worry about here. He's at home. This Pittsburgh offense versus righties isn't that good. They strike out at almost 23%. I think Shohei is in a really good spot, and his strikeout line is like 7.5 Ks. So I think there's a very good chance of him going 8 or 10 Ks in this matchup. And, I mean, if he's going double-digit Ks, he's likely going to be in a winning lineup here. We got to bring up Kikuchi here. So he's only 8% owned. He's a mid-tier price, but we've talked about him a lot this year. And he is a guy that can have absolutely great starts and a very high ceiling with solid strikeout stuff. Kevin Gausman has said he has the best stuff on their Toronto pitching staff. He just doesn't always put it together. So if he is on, he has a great ceiling, but it's a big if. And the Mariners strike out a decent amount versus lefties, 25%, but they do have a high ISO, and Kikuchi is averaging 30% less fantasy points when away. Just if you're looking for a guy to get off some ownership, I think he is an interesting, although risky play, and the range of outcomes, definitely favors Kikuchi just because he really could get to, high 20s, low 30s in fantasy points. Now, that is a little bit of an outlier performance, but it is absolutely possible for him. And that's one of the things, you're looking for to win in big GPP is that real solid, ceiling and range of outcomes. All right, next, we got Andrew Heaney, only 7,200. Look, he hasn't been that great this year. Also averaging 28% less at home. So he hasn't been quite as good at home. Now, I think I wouldn't take too much stock in that. The teams he's played at home are pretty good, so I think that partially weighs into that statistic. But this Dodger offense is good and not really one that I want to pick on. Although he does have a decent median projection for his price, and we know there is a little bit of a ceiling there. So I don't hate Heaney, just don't love him. Senega, all right, so I definitely think I would consider Senega if there wasn't some weather concerns with this game. So he has real solid upside, 33% K rate over his last 5 starts, 28% combined K rate. But with weather concern, I don't know if I can do it here. So just pay attention to weather if you are going to play Senega. Freddie P versus the Braves. He's at home. He's doing much better at home, but it is a very, very tall task to face that Braves offense. Solid 27% combined K rate, but the Braves are very good. Not a team I like to go against. JP Sears has been kind of sneaky good lately. He's super cheap. Makes some sense. However, Houston just doesn't strike out much versus lefties. All right. I think that'll do it for us today on DraftKings. Let's check out FanDuel here now. So, FanDuel, highest owned, Shohei Ohtani, 39%. This is no surprise. Big difference in price, from Ohtani to Valdez today. And, I mean, Ohtani has the upside in his favor. Look, 3 games of 55-plus fantasy points this year versus Valdez, who has also had 3. Look, I like both guys in this instant. Both guys have very solid upside. Ohtani's K rate is slightly better, but Valdez has the better matchup. The other thing I would say is Valdez is likely is more consistent. He has a lower FIP by, almost 0.5, 0.6, something like that. And the K rate is real solid. So Valdez is the more safe the Ohtani probably has the higher upside just because of his K rate. Next, we got Joe Ryan at 18%. I think Joe Ryan makes a lot of sense here. I think he could do very well, and he's had some really good games versus the White Sox. So 31 plate appearances, striking out 29%, only hitting 185. He had a great game versus them early in the season with 6 innings, only 87 pitchers and 7 Ks. So I definitely like Ryan as well. So Schmidt, we talked about a little bit. I like his upside here at, a pretty cheap price. A 6.5 K line is pretty high and, not too much lower than the Ohtani Valdez Ryan type K line. So it's an interesting lower owned play you could make. Kikuchi, would be your extremely risky one to go with, but there is some solid upside there. Now let's get in to some stacks. All right, stack attack time. So, highest owned, the Giants. Giants are the highest owned stack, which is very surprising versus Washington. And it's just because it's Jake Irving. He's not that great. Weather is warm in Washington. He had a 4.3 FIP over his last 5, 5.3 over his last 20. Not a great pitcher. Although I am very surprised that this ownership is going to the Giants. They're just not a team that generally puts up a ton of runs. Next, we got Cincinnati. Cincinnati's in a really good spot. They're at home versus a pitcher that's not very good. It's a, game total of 11. The wind is blowing out. It's warm. I think Cincinnati's in a great spot as far as trying to hit some home runs and stacking a team. Next, we got Minnesota versus Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn has been really good lately, but this Minnesota team somehow just keeps hitting. And stack-wise, they're super cheap. So definitely is an interesting kind of value stack that I could see playing out, especially if Lance Lynn is, a little bit higher owned, like it seems like he is on DraftKings. We got the Dodgers against Heaney. I think that makes a lot of sense. Heaney, 5.6 FIP over his last 5. 5 over the last 4. So Houston's popping up versus JP Sears also makes sense here. A lot of different ways you can go on this slate. Now, highest projected, we got the Braves versus Freddie Peralta. And then Arizona also in that game with Cincinnati. I think Arizona is very, very interesting today. Lively does have a little bit of strikeout upside, but his FIP just hasn't been good. 5.4, 5.14 over the last 20. So I think Arizona is very interesting and not that high owned. So I'll definitely probably have some Arizona here, as well as I will have Cincinnati, even though they're a little bit higher owned. Boston versus Senega. Senega, we have seen, has had some really blow-up games, so it is an interesting play at super low ownership. The other thing here is we talked about weather. Maybe there's an in-game delay. Senega gets out a little bit early. A lot of variables with this game and with the weather. However, it's not one of my favorites, but I totally understand if you want to stack them. All right, now let's go to the value side. We got Minnesota popping up all over the place on value. That is no surprise to me whatsoever. We also have Washington, which is, I kind of like this one. Washington has been a sneaky offense, and Alex Wood hasn't been that great. He also hasn't been working that deep into games. 5.72 FIP over his last 5, 4.7 over his last 20. I think Washington's an interesting one. Pittsburgh versus Shohei. We've seen Shohei's got lit up. He's given up some runs this year. So you could do worse than doing that. They have some guys with power, some guys with speed. You could definitely do that. All right, now let's check out the ceiling here. Braves, Dodgers, Houston. all have great ceilings, so no surprise with all of those. Cleveland versus Suarez, I don't love it. Suarez doesn't really get lit up that much. He doesn't have huge strikeout upside, so he's not going to blow you away, but I'm really not looking for just 3 runs, and it's rare that he gets blown up. So, all right, guys, that will do it for us today. That is the Friday breakdown, 11 games. Good luck. We will be back next week. Hope somebody has a takedown today. I can feel it's going to happen to somebody. You guys have a good one. See you next week. Bye.